The rain was coming down in sheets that night. The restaurant's neon sign flickered in the storm, casting a pale, tired glow across the empty parking lot. Inside, the clinking of dishes had stopped hours ago, the laughter of customers long gone. Only silence remained, broken occasionally by the hum of a buzzing light overhead. But in the far corner, tucked deep inside a booth, a girl no older than 20 sat curled up with her knees pressed to her chest, fast asleep. Her hair was damp from the rain, her uniform wrinkled, and her shoes placed neatly under the table. She didn't look like a worker who had gone home and forgotten her shift, she looked like someone who had no other home to go to. What she didn't know was that someone else was still in the restaurant. The CEO in disguise. Daniel Hartley wasn't just any man. By day, he was the CEO of a billion-dollar hospitality empire. But tonight, he was undercover. He had slipped into one of his small-town diners in plain clothes, determined to see what his employees' lives were like beyond the polished reports and smiling photos his managers fed him. He wanted truth, the raw, unfiltered truth. And there it was, right in front of him. A waitress, asleep in a booth after midnight. He stared at her, his chest tightening. This wasn't part of the plan. He came here looking for customer service flaws, maybe lazy management, but instead he had stumbled upon a story written in exhaustion and silent suffering. Challenge 1, the confrontation. Daniel slid into the booth across from her, his weight making the cushion squeak. She stirred awake, eyes wide, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she gasped, sitting up straight. I wasn't supposed to. I just needed a place to rest. Please don't tell the manager, I can't lose this job." Her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and pride, as if admitting weakness would cost her more than her job. Daniel leaned forward, softening his tone. "Relax. I'm not here to get you in trouble. What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Sophie." That single word carried weight. A name wrapped in fatigue and unspoken battles. Challenge 2, the story behind the booth. Over a cup of leftover coffee, Sophie told him her truth. She had been hired just 2 weeks ago, after bouncing between part-time jobs. Her mother was sick, the rent overdue, and every dollar she earned went into keeping the lights on at home. There were nights when she couldn't afford bus fare back to her neighborhood, so she stayed behind after her shift, waiting until morning to walk to her next job. She smiled faintly, as if trying to make light of it. "This booth is more comfortable than the sidewalk, you know? At least it's warm." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had sat in boardrooms filled with millionaires arguing about stock prices, but here was a young woman fighting just to survive another night. The next morning, the restaurant manager arrived early and caught Sophie still tidying up. His voice boomed with anger. "You can't sleep here, Sophie. This isn't a shelter, it's a business. If you can't figure out your life, maybe this job isn't for you." Sophie's face flushed red, her lips trembling as she struggled to apologize. But before she could, Daniel, still undercover, stood up. "That's enough," he said firmly, surprising both of them. The manager turned, scowling. "Who are you to tell me how to run my place?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. He had seen enough of this kind of arrogance. Still, he kept his identity hidden, only saying, "Sometimes people just need compassion. Isn't that what hospitality means?" The manager scoffed and walked away, muttering under his breath. Sophie turned to Daniel with a mixture of gratitude and shame. "You shouldn't have done that. Now he'll hate me even more." Daniel looked at her and said quietly, "Sometimes the right thing makes people uncomfortable. Don't ever be ashamed of that." The reveal. Later that week, the staff was gathered unexpectedly. The mysterious man who had been hanging around the restaurant returned, this time in a sharp suit. Daniel stood at the front, his presence commanding the room. "I'm Daniel Hartley," he announced. "I own this company." The room went still. The manager's face drained of color. Sophie froze, her hands clutching her apron. Daniel's voice grew steady, carrying weight like thunder before a storm. I came here undercover to see how things really work. What I found wasn't just a restaurant, it was a reminder that behind every paycheck, there's a person. Some of you treat this place as a stepping stone, others as a burden, and some, like Sophie, treat it as their only lifeline. He walked over to Sophie, who stood trembling in disbelief. You've shown me resilience, Sophie. You've reminded me why this business exists, not for profits, but for people. And I won't let your story end in a booth. The new beginning. Daniel offered Sophie a full-time position with benefits, support for her mother's medical care, and mentorship to grow within the company. She broke down in tears, unable to find words. For the first time in months, she felt like life was giving her more than closed doors. The manager who had berated her was quietly dismissed that same day. In his place, a new culture of kindness began to ripple through the staff. Sophie worked harder than ever, not out of desperation, but out of hope. She rose through the ranks, eventually managing the restaurant herself. Customers began to notice the warmth in the service, the difference in atmosphere. It was no longer just a diner, it was a second chance, embodied in every smile Sophie gave. The message. Months later, Daniel returned. He found Sophie at the counter, laughing with a group of young servers. She wasn't the weary girl curled up in a booth anymore, she was confident, radiant, alive.